Out of the studio and into the city. I'm Tyler Pyburn and we're here in Boston for the latest edition of CMS-Connected. We are talking everything from the news, the Panama Papers, as well as what about the employee journey. It's all happening here at the Intranet Reloaded conference here in Boston. Welcome in, everybody, to the CMS Connected show, the web content management industry's only news commentary show. We are live at the Intranet Reloaded event here at the Hyatt Regency, right on Boston's harbor. It is absolutely gorgeous here today. Love being here. I'm your host, Tyler Pyburn, alongside, to my left, Mr. Scott Liewehr. Scott, it's good to be back next to you, my friend.
It is good to be next to you, too, man. It's been a long time.
I've been away for about 2 years, but as Kat McKnight just said, sometimes Scott just has a tendency to suck people back in, and you did that. That's the way that works.
That's right, man, but we got you back, though. I'm psyched to have you back.
No, it's good to be back for sure. And we've got actually a very good episode of CMS Connected today, where we're going to be talking about why is no one talking about the employee journey. We talked so much about the customer journey. Actually, the last couple of episodes, we've mentioned the customer journey. We've talked about the journey builder from as far as products are concerned. But today we're going to be talking about the employee journey and why is nobody talking about that. And just a little bit later, we're going to be bringing on Jeff Willinger as well as Rachel Butts. They're going to be joining us on stage and going to be talking about why nobody is talking about the employee journey. So
and why they should be.
Exactly. Is why they should be, for sure. And also, one of the other things we're going to be talking about at the end of the show, we're going to be wrapping things up with the Panama Papers and the hacks. Now, the big question from a CMS perspective is it a CMS's fault? Are they the reason that actually took place? And I know you've got some interesting thoughts on that. Now, before we really get into kind of our news of the day, I'd like to actually say big thanks to the people that put this on and make this show happen. First off, Falcon Software. Falcon is a digital experience agency that can provide you with expert advice, integration solutions for all your creative design, content management, digital marketing and e-commerce, social or mobile needs, basically digital. Also, Digital Clarity Group, DCG, is a research and advisory firm focused on navigating organizations through the digital transformation process. So, with all that in mind, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump right into the news. Now, first off, Crown Peak. They actually are a cloud-based digital experience management platform provider. They announced earlier this month that they have merged with UK-based Active Standards, a digital quality management platform. Now, in another actually pretty significant announcement, Crown Peak has also affirmed a $50 million investment with West Coast-based venture capital firm K1 Investment Management to support the anticipated relaunch. So, Scott, with all this in mind, lots of moving parts, what's the real story here? You know, we talk about mergers and partnerships. What actually is this? Because we've been hearing a lot about both.
Yeah, why folks like to put out press releases that call these sorts of things partnerships is beyond me, when it's an extremely clear acquisition here. The K1 who acquired both firms, actually. So they acquired both Crown Peak, that was the web content management company, as well as Active Standards, basically bought the two of them, put them together, and probably that won't be the last marrying up they do, but this was clearly an acquisition, and I think they did so for good reason. I think it's a pretty good prospect for them.
So when you say that, why does this make sense for everyone?
Yeah, I think it makes sense for a couple of reasons. Number one, and thinking about the way that this is how private equity firms work, right? A number of them, they all have different strategies. Some come in, they just want to provide capital to a business that's already, growing really well. Others come and they seek out businesses that are, they're considered bottom feeders. That's not the case here. What the case is here is that essentially you have Crown Peak, which has a good SaaS solution for web content management. They were one of the first cloud-based content management systems out there. Just basically need some capital. They weren't putting a lot into marketing. We talked about this during the Sitecore acquisition as well, that these subscription-based firms have a lot harder time getting lots of cash, right? Because think about it, rather than your typical software vendor, they're not taking all that cash up front from a new buyer. They're basically taking it out over time. And so to fuel and grow that business, the cost of acquiring customers actually is significant and requires a lot of cash. So this is helpful for that. Second reason it's helpful is for Active Standards, pulling that into the mix here. I think it's a really good strategy for them to go pair these two companies together just because of what one can bring the other.
And real quick, talking about the end customer, how does this affect them?
Yeah, it affects them couple of ways. I think, for Crown Peak customers today, there's no change. For Active Standards customers today, there's no change. I think, however, that there's not a really large overlap between those two customer bases. So I think to be able to go out to, especially to Active Standards companies, and if you think about what Active Standards did, it's a governance platform that helps to identify challenges that you have on your websites and your web pages out there. So it finds your errors and missing links and all that stuff. It can go and basically search through all of that and come back and tell you, here's all the problems that you've got. But it didn't help you manage them. It didn't help you actually fix them. So to pair that up with Crown Peak and go, hey, I know you might have Adobe as your primary WCM, but you have all these other web properties out there that are on all sorts of different platforms. Use our solution to help you manage through kind of fixing all those and keeping them tidy and neat. So I think it's a really good value proposition.
Very interesting for sure. So some other interesting news. Let's go ahead and let's talk about EMC and Dell. Interesting things were happening with them for sure. EMC Corp wants to shed its content management business, Documentum, which was bought for $1.7 billion back in 2003. Now, the divestiture will help finance the company's biggest ever technology takeover by Dell. $67 billion in assets. That's a big chunk of dough, as they say. Dell recently made a deal to sell its IT services unit, formerly her system business, to NTT Data for $3.5 billion, and it's said to looking to sell its software, Quest and SonicWall, for a combined $4 billion as well. Now, Dell acquired SonicWall for about $1.2 in 2012, and Quest for $2.36 billion the same year. Really, what we're looking at here is Dell needs to come up with money to buy EMC, right?
That's a big number. It committed a really big number, $67 billion. Now, while you'll even have heard Larry Ellison talk about how jealous he is of this deal, that it's not kind of, now Larry Ellison can do whatever he wants, right? But it wasn't the time wasn't right for him to go buy EMC. He loves the valuation on this company. He loves the fact that basically EMC is a cash cow. And while it's older technology, they have a heck of a lot of customers to go and pursue. So it's a good deal for Dell, but you've got to come up with $67 billion. So they're selling off a number of assets to be able to go make room for this, essentially, in their portfolio. By the way, it's NTT was 3.05, not 3.5. But yeah, so I think they're just basically making room for them. I think the real question, though, is what the heck is going to happen to Documentum next?
And what is? I mean, realistically, what do you think? I mean, that's really the elephant.
Well, we're going to talk about the next thing is about HP selling off some assets to OpenText, but I think HP could go buy Documentum, to be honest with you. And maybe they're making room to go do that, I don't know. But I think Documentum would be a good fit with HP. I think it would be a good fit, well, not a good fit because they don't already have it, but OpenText would be up for buying them too. They buy everybody right now. So, and they have no concerns about trying to marry the two together. So, but I think HP might be even a good fit for them.
So I actually think you just got into my segue, and we're going to talk about HP right now. No, I love it, my friend. That's what we're all about here. All right, so HP dubbing its customer experience software. Palo Alto-based HP struck a deal with Ontario-based OpenText to divest its CX assets for $170 million. Now, the story of what OpenText gains is less compelling than what HP loses. Another tale in what has become a growing saga for HP, the once dominant IT and software company that last fall announced plans to cut up to 30,000 employees at the company, split into two businesses. Earlier this year, HP filed a $5.1 billion lawsuit related to its autonomy acquisition. So, thoughts on this? It kind of makes sense for OpenText, though, doesn't it? I mean, when we go into this, they're in, like you said, they're in the business of buying companies right now. So this kind of seems to work.
I'm an industry analyst, and I've long known that OpenText caters to me just a little bit less than the typical financial analyst that they cater to, a heck of a lot more. They really care a lot more about those who are judging their stock price and those who are judging their portfolio of technologies. I mean, they've been outwardly unapologetic about the fact that they basically go buy up businesses that have good valuations, that have good maintenance revenue to go after and take, and this is a really good business to go buy. I mean, no one said that TeamSite, HP's TeamSite, which was formerly Interwoven, was any super contemporary innovative company. Anybody who's in the room knows that maybe that's not the case if you're on it, but look, it's got a good bit of revenue coming in year over year. To have $85, $95 million coming in maintenance revenue that you have to do nothing for, that you don't have to put in a bunch of R&D behind, and is pretty good profit, is not a bad business to go buy when that's the model that you have.
Well, so go back to that profit. Now, I read something, and you and I talked about this off camera, about it being the company being profitable within 2 years, basically, after the purchase. Now, you say no, not necessarily, right?
So, so the quote was not that they'll be profitable. It's already a profitable business right now that they buy. The point that was made in one of the articles was, which was incorrect, was that given the purchase price of $170 million, that they would make the money back within 2 years because of the $85 to $95 million revenues. The challenge with that statement is that that assumes no operating costs whatsoever. So of course that's wrong. But certainly, look, at a 50% margin, it takes them 4 years. But nonetheless, it's a good business to go by given their model. And I think, as you mentioned, it's been very public that HP, first of all, they split about 6 months ago into two companies. One analyst gave a hat tip to Matt Mellon from 451 Research. He was the first one that really noticed or publicized that this team site book of business got booked under HP Inc., which is the consumer side of the business where they sell printers, not with the enterprise side of the business. So we kind of knew for a while that they were trying to get rid of this, and they've been very public about their
it's just bound to happen. It was a
lack
who was
of
going to be the buyer itself.
Yeah,
right?
exactly, of like for it. So.
Moving on, let's go and let's talk about Salesforce and SAP. Now, Salesforce's executive, Keith Block, actually told an audience right here in Boston back in 2014 that his company would be passing SAP as the largest enterprise applications company in the world. Now, 2 years later, SAP's yearly revenue of $23.7 billion, significantly higher than Salesforce revenue of more than $6.7 billion. Still, no denying the growth, however, of what's taking place with Salesforce. Kind of give me your thoughts on that. Can at any point in time, and that's the question, will Salesforce ever overtake SAP?
My question back would be, who cares? Truthfully. Sorry, but who really cares? It's great for Keith to go make headlines, and we're talking about it now because he made the statement, so I guess we act like we care, but nobody does really care. Unquestionably, Salesforce is on an upward trend. They're not profitable, but that doesn't matter to them because they're continuing to they'll go buy companies that have good cash flows, go pull them into the mix. They're certainly ahead of where SAP is in terms of being in the cloud, although SAP would want to dispute my comment there, but I think it's indisputable. But I think they're not really on the pulse of where some things are going. Salesforce has a wonderful business. They've always been really innovative, and they'll want to tell you that that's their big core competence. But if you look at what SAP has with HANA, you look at what IBM has with Watson. You look at about kind of where this whole world around data is going. Salesforce certainly has a gigantic repository of data, but they don't necessarily, I don't think, have the most, the best way to go tap into that per se. So I think SAP is building that business, and they're also coming along competing them. They decided, we said this 3 years ago. I told you on this show that when SAP decided to go get into this customer experience game, it would be game over. Not sure that it's game over, but they definitely have tried to come into the game now. They bought Hybris. They're building up their whole marketing stack now, and I think that they're going to be a significant player.
Well, that kind of goes into things what we talked about SAP a little bit off camera. We had talked about SAP and their ability to continue to reinvest in new things. You talk to that a little bit more because they continue to do that and continue to grow in other ways.
Yeah, look, both of these companies actually are doing a lot of investing in. They both have a ventures group that's out there kind of helping to incubate smaller companies or invest money into companies. But SAP just has a hell of a lot more cash flow. It's incomparable, the cash flow that SAP has versus a Salesforce. And given even what we said earlier about the cloud model and stuff, Salesforce just can't get ahead of it. So SAP has a lot more money to go throw into things, and they can make a lot of bad purchases, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't show up on the radar. Whereas I think Salesforce has to make them.
Let's talk about Facebook at Work and Jive. Now, Jive, a leading provider of modern communication and collaboration solutions for enterprises, actually announced its financial results for 2015. Jive's revenues rose by 10% to $195.8 million, and the company recorded a loss of $34.9 million. Now, Jive's CEO stated the figures were in line with expectations and made the pledge to become profitable by conclusion of 2016 during the company's annual conference at Jive World in Vegas. Now, I actually had the chance just earlier this week to catch up with the CEO via Skype, Elisa Steele. She actually does not see Facebook at Work as a competitor. Here's what she actually had to say about that.
Well, I think there's a whole host of tools that are out in the market today that allow social collaboration or social posting at work to be able to connect people, and that's really important. But what Jive does in addition to that is create a hub for an enterprise to get their work done across multiple aspects of someone's day. Yes, it includes social, but it's really centered on what are the goals and objectives of your team, your department, and your company, and unifying the experience so that you're all on the same track of what the company's strategy is, how you unify your messaging, how corporate communications takes place, and allows people and organizations to really contribute to that conversation, as well as managing your content, your goals, your projects, and what you're trying to accomplish at work. So I think it's the combination of that. It's not just collaboration alone. It has to be as a part of the actual workflow of a company.
Big thank you to Lisa for taking time out of her day to jump on a quick call with me. So what do you make of her comments? Now, she's not wrong by what she said, but what do you think? I mean, is it a competitor at this point, Facebook at work? Or, I mean, not yet, obviously.
Look, all due respect to her, of course she's worried as hell about what's going on here. She's just putting on a good face for the press. Look, Facebook solves Jive's biggest problem. Jive's biggest problem is getting, employees to actually engage, getting adoption amongst it. That's the thing that Facebook is best at. So of course, she's very concerned about it and would love to figure out how to basically tap into that capability. I mean, Facebook, in terms of what they did in the consumer market, changed the way that we all work and changed the way that we all operate individually. They changed our whole idea of sharing, which inside the enterprise is the biggest challenge, right? Jive is trying to solve the sharing problem, trying to figure out how to get all that great IP and knowledge out of people's heads and into the digital space so that we can collaborate on it, improve, and be able to retain that knowledge and information over time as well. So Facebook addresses head-on the problem that Jive has. That being said, is it today a big problem? Certainly not today. No, I mean, first of all, it's like in beta. It's only available to a few businesses that have been allowed in. She's absolutely right. It doesn't have nearly the capabilities that a Jive has. It really is truly kind of a social network inside the enterprise. But when they get some momentum, I mean, that's their Trojan horse. That's their beachhead to get in. Once they've got that, once you've got everybody's attention, once you've got all of the employees on your platform and actually using it, you can do whatever the heck you want. And it's like they don't have the cash to go build it out a little bit more. So, of course, she's concerned. I think they'll start with SMB, they being Facebook. We'll start with the SMB, which is very much where Jive is not focused. The other advantage that Jive has today is that Facebook is very much in the cloud, and Jive has an on-prem solution, which is really relevant for many businesses that are regulated or whatever else. So they would have to modify that to be able to meet all the needs of the enterprise. But again, if they decide to, then they will, and she won't have anything to say about it.
And then we'll bring her up here and we'll have another episode of CMS Connected. All right. So we are going to be taking a very quick commercial break. We'll be right back in just a few seconds here on CMS Connected, where we do, in fact, talk about the employee journey. No, not the customer journey, but the employee journey. That's coming up right here in just a few seconds on CMS Connected.
So you've got a great website. Your marketing team spends hours driving visitors to it and nurturing them into leads. And your sales team spends hours collecting, qualifying, organizing, and chasing those leads. Sales wants to focus on what they do best, selling. And marketing wants to get on with what they do best, creating innovative campaigns. But how do you make both teams happy? The solution is marketing automation.
Welcome back to CMS Connected, everyone. I'm your host, Tyler Pyburn, alongside, to my left, as always, Mr. Scott Liewehr. And we're live at the Intranet Reloaded event at the Hyatt Regency Boston Harbor. And today's show, like we said earlier, we are in fact going to be talking about why is no one talking about the employee journey. Now, the employee journey mapping is every bit as important as the customer journey mapping. It needs to be focused on before you can get the customer journey right. Now, employee journey mapping will encourage you to ask yourself and investigate some important questions, such as, what are people who work for you saying about your company? What is your employer brand? And what are you doing to attract the right people? So, Scott, before we introduce our guests, quick question for you. Where does employee journey map begin? Your thoughts?
Boy, well, I think about employee journey as multiple journeys, many journeys, right? And so every journey has a different start and a different end, just like as a journey does. But I think certainly from the very first time that you're onboarding someone and you're starting to understand them, and that's when you're first inspiring your culture all the way through to all their engagement with the organization. I think it's really right to talk about this, as we've said in many times when we've talked about customer experience, is so much of the time your customer's experience with your brand is very much via one of your employees. So I think this is really helpful.
All right, so Scott and I could talk all day about this. Not really, we're more focused on the customer. So let's bring in people that know what they're talking about when it comes to the employee journey. We welcome into the conversation two extremely knowledgeable guests on the topic of the employee journey, Rachel Butts and Jeff Willinger. Big round of applause for these two. Excellent, great to have you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us today here on CMS Connected. Quick, give me the cliff notes. For the folks that don't know you, start with you, Rachel. Give us a little background on you.
So my name is Rachel Butts, and I am the Program Manager of Internal Communications at Children's Health, the 7th largest pediatric healthcare system in the nation. And we are honored to make life better for children every day in the North Texas area.
Excellent. And Jeff?
That pales in comparison to Rachel's mission. I just create digital workplaces for companies. I'm very passionate about building cultures of collaboration throughout the country. I work for a company called RightPoint. I live in Chicago, but I'm on the road maybe 120 nights a year, seeing a lot of you amazing people. And thanks for having us.
Excellent. Great. No, honestly, it was great to have you. And to be honest with you, these guys are clearly characters. There's no question about that. I talked to both of them in the hallway, saw our emails going back and forth as we were getting ready for. There's no shortage of personality on this stage. I promise you that for sure. So let's get kind of right into the employee journey. So Rachel, the customer journey is well documented. It's discussed, debated over and over and over. I mean, I talk about it almost on a daily basis. Now, but not much is actually said about the employee journey. Now, walk us through the actual journey itself and kind of speculate to me as to why it seems always to take a back seat to the customer journey.
So like we talked about, at the intro, the journey can begin at a lot of different places. And really the crux of any journey is that experiences create attitudes that then create behaviors that give us outcomes. And so the employee experience is really just a series of experiences that the employee takes and analyzes, and then that creates their willingness and energy to produce behaviors that generate outcomes. And I would even argue, like we talked about earlier, the employee journey, I don't even think begins with onboarding. I think it really begins with the first time an applicant reads a job post and says, oh that's me. Like, I need this job and they need me and this is gonna be amazing. And their experience from applying through the job, maybe speaking with a recruiter, the phone interview, all of that are experiences that will feed into the employee journey. What do you think, Jeff?
I feel like we need a flow chart for that answer. That was just, I feel like I need a PowerPoint slide with some kind of long arrow, and because you really described it, point on. And if we were playing buzzword bingo, I would throw in the word, it has a lot to do with culture right off the bat. I'm sure if we interviewed folks that were at RightPoint before they were there, during and after, they probably have, maybe the exact same opinion or the same opinion. So thinking about what it is that brings them there and what it is to keep them there and then hopefully never leave. What is it that's going to make the employee really want to stay to continue that journey at whatever organization they're at?
So when we talk about customer experience, we talk about how difficult it is there's the notion of customer experience management. How hard is it then to manage an experience which is in someone's basically head? How hard is it to manipulate that? Given that it's employees, is it easier in any way to kind of manipulate the employee experience to improve it? Or to have people have a better perception so that your outcomes are better?
So I build intranets, I build extranets, .coms, my personal passion is intranets, right? The employees, how do we drive engagement? How do we drive adoption? Building out a roadmap before we get started. And when I look at most companies, they put all their money into external, right? They want that customer experience. They want to bring customers in, but they don't realize that having a great intranet is really going to be the secret sauce to building out a great culture. And I see what companies are paying for a .com website versus what they want to pay for an internal site. They generally, and you guys know, people that are in corporate communications and marketing, the budgets go to the .com, not necessarily for the intranet. So our jobs as corporate communicators is to show value, right? As new employees come in, the millennials, even some of the Gen Xers, what's going to keep them there, right? So our jobs is to figure that out and really build on that.
So my question to you is, when I look at that, when I hear, all the money goes to the .com, to the front-facing site, not to the internal site, from someone that's been on a few different companies, that's been a part of a few different intranets, and literally saw nobody take part in that, how do you sell that then? How do you sell the fact that, no, an intranet's where you need to also put money? Because to me, from an external person that's really, never had buy-in, never used it all that often, how do you pitch that to say, well, this is how you do it, and you need to spend money here?
I've sat at Fortune 500 companies where they had a CEO that was in his late 40s, and he'd show me, this is what this is how we communicate, and he opened up his computer, and he had, I think it was Outlook 2003 or something, like, it was a really outdated Outlook, or maybe it was even Lotus Notes. It was really just wonky looking, and he was proud of it. And so I tell this story all the time. I know I've been talking to a lot of you. I tell stories about how I like to eat a lot. And the reason why I like to, everyone knows why I like to eat a lot, but I run marathons. And the only reason why I run marathons is because I like to eat a lot. So I see value in it. So if people don't see value in coming to the intranet, they're never going to go there. So back to your question, you have to show some kind of ROI. You need some milestones, some justifications. And again, answer the question. I know everyone in the crowd could answer it. What's in it for me as the end user? So I see value in running because I like to eat so much. You guys, if there's no value in going to the intranet, it's just going to be another one of those places, oh, I have to go there.
And I think you have the opportunity to tell your employees every day what you think about them by the places you give them to visit. And so if you give them an outdated place to go or someplace that's hard to find things, you tell your employee subconsciously, if you do your job, that's awesome, but we're really not going to set you up super well. And so organizations have a huge opportunity to create a really welcoming environment for employees that are going to build kind of like a confidence cycle for them, because they know that they can go where the organization gives them to go to get the things that they need.
So how about expectations? Anyone's experience is certainly based on their expectations. It's based on both the perception of actual experiences and the expectations that they walked in with. Given the changing workforce and the expectations that are being set, not because of where they worked at their last company, right? That's not necessarily where their expectations are being set. The expectations are being set because they've got the power in their phone to go and now do Amazon Now or whatever it's called, and within 30 minutes I can have anything delivered to my house. Or wherever I am. I was at a Cub Scout camp this weekend and people had pizza delivered to it. Like, it's awesome from the phone. So expectations are constantly rising. Is it the same? Our employee expectations are constantly rising? And does that make this gap, this division between where that 40-something-year-old, which is not old by the way, I'm 40-something, CEO was in terms of his expectations and what he's trying to provide versus what the folks are coming in and expecting? Does that make that even harder to fill?
I think that in any type of evolution, right? Yeah. We're talking about the journey. I'm a big crawl, walk, run guy. So you can't expect to
you don't crawl marathons.
No. Trust me, on that mile 26 I am.
You were that guy in Boston a couple days ago that took 8 hours. Okay.
Hey, you know what? At least he did it, right?
Absolutely.
So I always think, sort of like running a marathon, right? When I ran my first marathon, I just didn't go out there and run 26.2. I ran 1 mile, 2 miles, and somehow I slugged my way, tweeted, Facebooked my way through 26.2 miles. Same exact thing when building out an intranet. You just can't expect you're going to build something and there's going to be adoption. You have to give them a reason to go there, get some quick wins, whatever it is. Usually most organizations, it's search, right? Mm-hmm. They can never find anything. Let's make search amazing, whatever amazing is to that firm, right? Everyone's got different definitions of what that looks like.
And I don't know that organizations have ever really matched the consumer experience before. And so it's sort of a foregone conclusion that what I can do at home is not what I'm going to be able set up to do at work. And so I think organizations have a competitive advantage were they ever to invest in that to, you'd really want to work for a company that you could access just like you can your online banking or your social connections, however that is. Mm-hmm. I think it's an interesting proposition to recruit top talent to even come close to the expectations you have as a individual.
Sure. All right, and Jeff, talk about the crux of the division in thinking. We want customers to love us, obviously, but we want employees to produce for us at the end of the day. Talk to that.
So there's definitely, that's usually the big disconnect within organizations, right? You want them to produce, but you also want to make it, I talked about this in my last session, it's got to be easy. If it's not easy, they're never going to do it. So I talk about user experience in just about everything, and especially when it comes to being an employee at a company. It's got to be easy. I'm not talking about a challenging job. I'm talking about easy, whether it's a commute or whether it's working internally, whatever it is, it's got to be easy. So that's usually why there's a big disconnect within employees, because I see it just not being a great work experience for them.
About the user experience at the end of the day. So, Rachel, let's go to the most critical steps to employee mapping. I know obviously we talked about the flow chart the whole way through, but what's the most important parts that you would like to focus on, you think you should focus on?
To know that you know what you know is the most important thing that you
Really?
can do. I think so. So earlier,
Yeah, that's definitely true.
You know what you know, you know.
thank you.
Got it.
Hashtag, I'll own that. In a session that we had earlier in the conference today, we talked about the difference between surveys and data. And you can think that you know what your employees are going through. I think a lot of leaders have that kind of, I know what's happening on the floor, but one of the ways that I have tried to find out the truth of the employee journey at Children's Health is I shadow an ER nurse. I spend 8 hours in the ICU. I stay overnight and follow a housekeeper so that I know where are they using technology, where are they having questions that they don't know how to answer, how are they, is their mood changing from the time that they come into work to the time that they go out of work because they had to battle something to accomplish the thing they're supposed to. And so it's kind of old school. It takes a lot of time. It's not something that most of us, with all of the boxes we have to check as communicators, but I think the way to make it most successful and relevant. And you also create friends and advocates along the way so that when I am able to be part of a project to help improve the employee experience and they see, oh, Rachel's a part of it. Mm-hmm. She hung out with me for 8 hours and she didn't do it to report on me or anything. She just wanted to know more about me. They're likely to adopt. And so, yeah.
So when we talk about customer experience, we think about it as a kind of a hierarchy of needs, wherein the kind of most basic need is to have the product or service that I'm paying for actually do what it says it's supposed to do, right? If it doesn't do that, then I don't care how seamless it is, and I don't care how delightful any part of the experience is. If the hotel doesn't have my room, I don't really care how clean your hotel is, nor how great the ambiance, right? So therefore, we basically talk about creating all of these maps of all the different journeys that a customer might go through and pick out where are the things that are completely falling down so that you have no more broken experiences. Is that the same advice that you'd use internally? Like you just mentioned a whole lot of journeys and a whole lot of, so where does a company start? Like what do they fix?
So I think that's where having the connections with the frontline staff is going to be important as well. You understand the pain points, where the questions that they're looking, they're going to technology and it's not serving them, so they're calling, well, I know that this person knows that person, and if I can get to them, then I can find it. Yep. Is incredibly helpful, I think.
If you could even find that person.
Right, which is, and so that's why people finders tend to be, and tend to be the most used applications on an intranet, even if the intranet is not functioning, people are looking for people there.
Facebook at work.
Another way to go at it, if you're just overwhelmed with the situation, is to start with your strategic goals. I mean, there's an entire industry of industrial engineering that is on process improvement, and if you can work back from your strategic goals, find out why you're not, just knocking them out of the park, I think you'll find a lot of pain points for employees on collaboration or connection or having the information they just need.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I want to actually talk about is the generational gap as far as the end user, because to me, I think that's something that's actually interesting. You have your millennials that 20-something, and then obviously you have someone usually more executive level, but can be in the older. How does that change the perspective, especially when we're first starting out? What are your thoughts on the generational gap when using the internet?
I think I'm going to do a little case study, mini case study with a real old-fashioned firm with a lot of salespeople they're a liquor distributor. In the old days, there used to be an admin that would walk around at the end of the day with an Excel spreadsheet and all the sales guys sitting at their desk, and they'd look at it and see their sales numbers. Then in the next phase, that same admin no longer has to walk around. She sends them an email with an attachment. And I love attachments. This is not me, though. And then in the Web 2.0, that same admin, guess what? There's no more email, there's no more attachments. They put it on their intranet, and guess what? When you log in, it knows who you are, what your territory is, if you're a sales manager, if you're a sales rep, or if you're the director of sales. So, and you could skew it however you want. So now I have to go to the intranet to get the same exact sales data. And guess what? These guys in their 50s and 60s and women that are out there pounding the pavement, they just adopt to it or else they don't get their sales numbers. And I've got to tell you, the adoption is basically like 99%. It's ridiculous. No kicking and screaming. They see value in it. And guess what? When they went to the intranet, they're like, wow, they see corporate news, they see little polls, they see new hires, promotions. And so it didn't happen overnight, but so the generation gap, it's sort of, with the right user experience and design, there is none.
That's interesting, and I would imagine it's...
The show's over.
Mic drop. I'd imagine, too, that it's even that much more difficult because that generational gap that you're talking about, if you think about it, typical business, maybe this is even true in healthcare, but a typical business is your kind of youngest staff tends to be the most client-facing. Mm-hmm. So whether you're in a consulting business like even RightPoint, you tend to have the ones who are on-site at the client all the time tends to be the younger staff, and the older, mature part of it, or management, they're back at the office sort of a thing. So the gap is even wider, I would imagine, in that case. And more
Definitely. So I love this conversation. Generational expectations that come, it's really not about how old you are, it's about what happened to you when you were young that dictated your experience of life and your...
It sounds like an episode
Don't
of
bring up,
Criminal
yeah,
Minds.
don't bring up, I need a couch for that. Don't bring up my...
Well, okay, I'll keep it very specific to our conversation then. So the different generations, whereas it comes to expectations of technology and access to information at work, the millennial generation, and in our specific situation, we are 40% millennial. And that, because we are a teaching facility, and a lot of young nurses are attracted to pediatrics. And it's even more than just the way that they can access the things they work. It's how they express themselves and what they need to feel like they're doing a good job. Recognition and reinforcement changes across the generations. Or boomer may be more comfortable with the annual work analysis and a review process that's a standard time, whereas a Gen Xer may want more quarterly conversations because Generation X tends to be more connected across the people spectrum, the friendship-based. Whereas a millennial, because of the rise of social media and the new definition of sharing and liking and friending and all those things simply mean, I like things because I acknowledge it. My sister posted something and I want her to know that I'm paying attention to her, so I like something whether I do or not. That different interpretation of validation and recognition has significantly changed what a millennial is looking for in the workplace because their life is telling them that they're good based on this. Mm-hmm. And the conversations aren't necessarily built in, especially with an organization that has leadership that's in a boomer generation. And so I think it's awareness of keeping employees engaged, whether that's through technology or in the person-to-person interaction, and deciding whether or not you're going to fulfill those needs.
So Jeff, does that make it easier then? Because I would think, I mentioned that the expectation gap might be wider, but adoption might be even easier given the kind of changeover of staff. Is it looking up for adoption given the kind of nuances?
It is, but to Rachel's point real quick on that whole liking thing and validation, I have got 3 daughters, and I encourage them to go for quality over quantity. We would have contests. Who has more likes on their Instagram or their Facebook feed or their tweets. I'm like, just quality over quantity, but yet, they need the validation. So unfortunately, we live in that age until the adults tell our kids it's not, we don't care. And I could see why a lot of people drop out of social networks. But to the adoption, it does make it easier.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to stop you there. I want to go back to that because you go to a lot of CEOs and we talk about quality over quantity. And I remember being in a boardroom meeting and having the CEO of the company say, why didn't we have more likes on this internally? So that still does happen. Talk to that a little bit.
So I have a theory. I think the expression of self in some cultures is scary. I think that if you go to an organization that has a big meeting and they have a question and answer section and nobody raises their hand, it's because they don't feel confident expressing their questions or doubts or concerns in a public forum. And social collaboration in the workplace is very similar. I mean, if you're not having active conversations in real life, that's not going, all digital workplaces do is take what's happening in real life and move it online. And so if you don't have the culture that supports that, adoption and engagement I see as two different things, right? Because a millennial is more used to updating platform, Facebook updates, and we all figure out what we're going to do now. Like, I can now love something instead of just like it, and I just get used to that.
Wow.
So,
I could wow it too.
you can wow it. You can cry. Lots of all the emojis. And so adoption of it, like actually using the technology and figuring it out, is kind of, I think, a millennial strength. But the engagement, the liking thing socially, is not that they don't know how to do it. I'm just afraid to express myself. So I think culture plays into that.
And in organizations, the big question that I get is, we want to do anonymous posting. I hate anonymous posting anywhere. But then again, to your point, Rachel, a lot of people are just going to be afraid to post, and therefore they won't. So I think I saw the statistic to that point about the emojis and the Facebook and how many people were using it. I guess I was one of the top 10,000 people in the world to use those emojis. Thank you very much. It's a little
Put that on your
and the first guy over 40 on Snapchat. Two very amazing claims to fame.
I absolutely love it. I think we'll probably wrap it on that note. That is phenomenal. Big round of applause. Rachel Butts, Jeff Willinger, thank you guys so very much for coming on. Appreciate it. And for folks out there that want to get in touch, Rachel, how can they reach you?
My Twitter handle is @rbutts1981.
Jeff?
J Willie, JWillie. There you go.
Big Willie style, I love it. All right, for Rachel Butts, Jeff Willinger, Tyler Pyburn, we'll be right back here on CMS Connected.
Your job is to cut through the noise. To succeed, you need to reach out to your target audiences in real time with messages that speak to them. You can't let technology get in the way of your brand. That's the spirit. First Spirit is a powerful solution that helps you effectively communicate and engage with your target audience. Get an awesome ROI. Success in the market means your message got through to the right people at the right time in the right way. And that's why you need First Spirit. Get started with digital marketing. Visit www.espirit.com now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to CMS Connected, the web content management industry's only news commentary show. I'm Tyler Pyburn, alongside Scott Liewehr of Digital Clarity Group. It's time for CMS Insider. So, Scott, as most everyone knows by now, Panama Papers breach was largest data leak in history with 2.6 terabytes of data, 11.5 million documents, more than 214,000 shell companies exposed. I mean, these are just crazy numbers we're talking about here. Now, hackers breached systems of Panama-based law firm Mossack Fonseca and leaked extraordinary amount of documents that has shed a light on tax-avoiding efforts by the world's elite leaders, which was likely the result of unpatched content management systems. Now, let's talk about this, because that's obviously CMS Connected, CMS Insider. The first question, what can be learned from this? And I know one of the things you want to focus on is open source. Is it the fault of open source?
The first question, though, that goes even before that is that make sure, if you're going to be a criminal, that you find a lawyer that has security under wraps. There's been a lot of articles written about the fact that these guys were using Drupal. I think they also had who else they had? WordPress,
Drupal,
and Drupal, and so look, there's an awful lot out there who want to go and once again with the FUD go throw the open source under the bus and kind of everything baby out with the bathwater on this. this is not the fault of open source. This is the fault of folks who just are not caring at all about security. They were on releases that were multiple years old, where lots and lots of revisions had come out with plugins for not plugins, but updates for it, so that basically take care of these breaches. They put out very, very, very public statements that if you've got this, basically upgrade now, sort of a thing. And these guys just ignored it because you always think that it can't happen to you. I would think you'd be a little bit more considerate if you're, harboring the criminal investments of big politicians and stars, but I guess these guys weren't. But it's also not the fault of open source here because the hack here was also on email. And the email system that they were using was Outlook. But once again, they were using a really old version of Outlook webmail. They hadn't updated it at all. And so it was really easy to go figure out the ins and outs of this thing. So, if anything, to be honest, I will say if you are gonna put a slam on open source, I think it's not a slam, but instead it's a caution that says, if you're open source, you've got to be more hands-on, right? You have to be much more aware of the releases that are coming out, about the cautions that are coming out, because it's not so the upgrades tend to be fewer and less far in between. But that being said, I think if anything, an Acquia, who is the kind of Red Hat equivalent of the Drupal world, they would benefit by this, because I think if you had an Acquia in place or a professional services group basically was handling this for you, they very much would have taken care of something like that. So if anything, I would imagine that their phones are ringing more because of something like this. But it's not a you can have an outdated version of any proprietary system as well, not have updated it, and there be breaches.
So the last final point, I think, to mention, obviously given the subject today, digitizing in general, dangerous when you digitize everything, right?
Well, that's the thing too, is here, I mean, a lot of times, look, we're at a conference here where we're talking about enterprise social and about how to communicate internally, and part of the reason for doing that is because as you digitize things and as you get information out of people's brains and into a way that they can be shared, collaborated on, and you can benefit by the crowd, the challenge with that is you are more vulnerable, because now you've got stuff written down, and it's not just a phone call with Putin's cronies or whatever, but now it's actually like in written digital form. So yeah, we really do undervalue, I think, security. It's a conversation that you leave kind of to the CIO, but it really is relevant and really matters. And I think as it relates to privacy, that's a conversation it's a different conversation, but it's one that's starting to be held a lot more. UK just released new guidelines. So I think people are going to be a lot more aware about who has their information, and not just kind of in an online world what business is out there, but maybe even who you're doing business with and what information they have about you.
Yes, indeed. And that right there will do it for us. As a CMS Insider, this is CMS Connected. That's all the time we have for today's show, but make sure you check out some previous shows on cms-connected.com. You can see this episode as well as previous episodes in their entirety. Lots of great stuff on there for many years of episodes, actually.
Say one more thing. Something that happened over the course of this last month that we didn't cover today was a Sitecore acquisition, and we did a little one-off on that one. So point people to that too, I think.
Absolutely. You can find one-offs and actually more content on the weekly basis actually going to be going forward as well. So make sure you log on to cms-connected.com. Take a look at all previous episodes as well as content going forward. Before we go, definitely want to say a big thank you to Falcon Software and Digital Clarity Group. And on behalf of my co-host Scott Liewehr and Jeff Willinger and Rachel Betts, I am Tyler Pyburn saying so long. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Remember, get connected, stay connected right here on CMS Connected. Take care.